What is up, guys? This is Kyurem from the Trinity of Lift, and today I'm bringing all of you guys my UA deck profile, Post-CROS Souls. So, lately I have been looking into buying a new deck, and after contemplating multiple choices, I have come to building UA for the fact that in my time previously when I've played this deck on things like YGO Pro, I've had a lot of fun with it, and especially with the new Cross Soul support, I just really got motivated to build this deck with the new support, and really I'm just having a lot of fun with it. This specific build that I have brought to you guys today is a pretty fun build of UA. It's probably not the most standard of builds, but it's a fun one that I have created, I guess you could say, and it's still pretty fun and effective. So that is what I'm going to bring all of you guys today, so let's jump right into it, starting with the main deck. Alrighty, so starting us off, we have the 3 copies of UA Rivalry Bounder. Rivalry Bounder is here to help us just swarm the board in general, as his effect is very, very strong. As previously, before, UA really didn't have a way to swarm the field with monsters. That is, until this card came into existence, as whenever he is normal summoned on our turn or special summoned on our opponent's turn, he can activate to special summon a UA monster from either our hand or our graveyard. Rivalry Bounder just opens up a ton of new plays. Either whether it be something along the lines of abusing UA Perfect Ace, or just summoning a variety of different beat sticks to just keep beating our opponent and just applying pressure. He just does a ton of stuff for this deck, so that is why we do run him at 3. Oh, if I can get him out of shadow, my goodness. Following him, we have 2 copies of UA Dreadnought Dunker. Dreadnought Dunker is a very strong beat stick in this deck, as whenever it does battle damage to your opponent, he will trigger, allowing you to destroy 1 additional card after the battle, which in and of itself is a very strong effect. And if not to make it any better, he also has piercing damage, so really whenever he attacks, he usually will be doing at least some sort of damage to at least get his effect. We do not need 3 because 3 will clog, and again, all of the UA monsters are searchable to some degree, so we really don't need to maximize on Dreadnought Dunker, but that's why I have decided to run the 2 as a happy medium, just to see him when I can every so often, or so I don't clog him as much as if I were to be running 3 of him. Alright, so following that, we have our 3 copies of UA Midfielder. Midfielder is the deck that basically makes this deck work at all, as he is the only normal summonable UA out of the entire bunch, and he is the one that will be synergizing really, really extremely well with our UA stadiums, as we can start generating that +1s with stadium and midfielder. So that is again why we're running 3 of him. Following that, we have the 1 copy of UA Goalkeeper to act as our main deck copy of Stardust Spark Dragon, as pretty much that is his effect. He has the effect of Stardust Spark Dragon on our opponent's turn only, and Goalkeeper just really helps you protect your lock cards like your UA Perfect Ace, as well as just he is a pretty good card in general to use to protect your board if you do have something like a UA midfielder on your board who naturally has lower stats than the other UAs. So as in general, he just is a fairly good wall for this deck. Next up, we have 2 copies of UA Mighty Slugger. Previously, in majority of UA builds before Cross Souls came out, Slugger would have been at 3, but I feel that 3 is a bit too much now that we have ways to summon the UAs from deck, besides just searching them out with UA Stadium. And because of that, I never really found that 3 Slugger was all that necessary, although by himself, he is a very, very strong monster, as he does have that Armades effect, so he can really just help us push for OTKs, like, almost no problem. Like, he can allow us to push through 5 back rows or Necros of Valkyries and all that kind of stuff without having to worry about them at all. So that is why we do run the 2 Mighty Slugger. Finally, for the last 2 UA monsters, we do run 2 copies of UA Perfect Ace, because Perfect Ace is our lock monster, as once per turn we can just discard a card to negate any effect, basically, which is really, really strong in helping us against things like Clyforts, Necros, and all that kind of big meta scary stuff. And much like Mighty Slugger, you don't really need 3 anymore, because there is now ways to summon UAs from deck much more easily. So again, we did cut down on 1 Perfect Ace copy as well, just to alleviate some space for other cards that we did want to run in this deck. Following UA Perfect Ace, we have 2 more monsters, and those are 2 copies of Assault Halberd. Now, we run the 2 copies of Assault Halberd to 1 act as essentially free tribute fodder for our level 5 and level 6 UAs, as if our opponent does have a monster on their field, we can just special summon us Halberd for free, as well as he is another Rota target, and that he has the chance to even search out another copy of himself whenever he does battle damage, much like Dreadnought Dunker and his trigger effect. So that is also why we do run 2 Assault Halberds to round off the monster lineup. Now then, moving on to the spells, we start off with 3 copies of UA Signing Deal. Now, Signing Deal is really, really strong. In my opinion, it's probably one of the best cards in the deck for the fact that it's basically a spell card that can grab you any UA monster from your deck that you want, and the only cost is that you just take some life points in damage. It really isn't that much of a deal because of the fact that your deck is trying to OTK as hard and as fast as possible. So, UA Signing Deal essentially acts as 3 more copies of basically any other monster that you want in your deck, because again, it can just grab any one of the UA monsters and just summon it to your field, albeit their effects are negated and you take some burn damage. But really, just because of the way the UAs run, how they bounce each other back to the hand to summon each other, the effect negation part of this effect really is trivial, I guess you could say, which is why UA Signing Deal is just even better of a card. Following that, we have the 3 copies of UA Stadium, because this is the field spell that makes the world go round. You need 3 of it, because whenever a UA monster is normal summoned, you can just search another UA, which is by itself a +1. And whenever a UA monster is special summoned, all monsters you control gain 500 attack. So it just keeps giving you benefit for your aggro plays, which is why we have to run 3 Stadium. Following the 3 Stadium, we have the 1 copy of Terraforming, because that is how essential this field spell is to this deck. So I decided to put Terraforming in just to act as another 4th copy of the deck, and it just really helped me deck thin the Stadiums out so I can draw into more monsters or something else rather than just Stadium, as again, because Stadium is fairly searchable as well. So that is why we wanted the 1 Terraforming. Then, finally, for the last UA-specific spell card, we do run the 1 copy of UA Power Jersey. Now, I felt that only 1 copy was necessary in this build of UA for the fact that not Dreadnought Dunker, Rival Rebounder is the card that will be usually getting us our big board presence and our big advantage. And because of that, Rival Rebounder can just set up our OTKs without Jersey even being necessary. Although Power Jersey is a nice-to-have card, I really didn't need it in many of my OTK plays. And because of that, it just is a nice-to-have card, so that is why I did decide to cut it down to 1. Next up, we have the 3 copies of Reinforcement of the Army, because we need to search out our midfielders and our Assault Halberd as much and as often as we can, just so we can either get free tribute fodder or get our entire deck going by itself. So that is why we do have the 3 copies of Rhoda. Next up, we have the 2 copies of the Monarch Stormforth, just to help us alleviate drawing into those bigger level UAs, as if we do end up trying to draw into all the higher level monsters, we really do not have that good of a hand, so we do have the Monarch Stormforth in here just to help alleviate those hands as much as we can, so that we can still play the game to some degree. Then we have 3 more spell cards. We have the 1 Raigeki for just general board clear. And then finally, I guess you could say this is a sort of tech for my specific build. We have 2 copies of Magic Planter. Now, let me touch up on why I run Magic Planter on a little bit. Now, my entire trap lineup, as you guys will soon see, is completely comprised of continuous traps. And due to how the new card, UA Penalty Box, has a very strong effect, but while only it's in Graveyard, I kind of took the idea from Volcanics and their Blaze Accelerator Reload, and that because your big power trap wants to be engraved, I decided to try and put Magic Planter into this deck so that you can still use your UA penalty box and not have to worry about it being left on field, as if you're playing against a smart player and they see you flip it up, they're probably not going to MST it, because if they do, you end up getting a +1 from that penalty box engrave. So usually you cannot rely on your opponent to get your own penalty boxes off board, so that is why I decided to put 2 Magic Planter into the deck, just to help us get through our deck some more, as well as to just alleviate that issue of having penalty boxes on board. It also isn't that bad either if you do draw into it without continuous traps, because we do have the UA Perfect Ace to use it as basically just free discard fodder also. So that is why I feel that Magic Planter really isn't a bad card in this deck, and it just really helps with the general trap lineup of this deck. Now then, speaking of the trap cards, we shall get right into them right now. We're going to start off with 3 copies of UA Penalty Box. This is the card that makes this deck a lot more consistent in my opinion, as UA Penalty Box, whenever it's in Graveyard, you can just simply banish it to add a UA spell or I believe it's a UA spell. Yes, it is a UA spell from your deck. So it can grab you things from Stadium to UA Power Jersey to even UA Signing Deal. So that is why we do want to have the UA penalty box in our graveyard as much as we can. Again, which is why we have the Planters in this deck. As well as his actual on-field trap effect is also pretty strong, as it's just free banish removal for 2 turns. Next up, we have 3 copies of Feature Chain, just for general effect negation, and again, more synergy with Magic Planter. And then finally, we have 3 copies of Call of the Haunted. Now, Call of the Haunted is a card that is really a kind of a love-hate thing, I understand, with some UA players. Due to the fact that how the UAs work, you will constantly have your Call of the Haunted dead on field. But again, it goes around full circle for this specific build, as that is why, again, we do run the Magic Planters to just sort of alleviate the penalty box and the Call of the Haunted from field. Just so we don't have just random trap cards clogging up our back row, as well as to just get us a free 2 cards off of it. So that will round off our main deck. Moving on to the extra deck, we start off with the 1 copy of Lavavo Chain, because Lavavo Chain can send us our UA penalty box to the graveyard, so that alone makes Lavavo Chain fairly important in this deck. Then we run pretty generic rank 4, starting off with the number 80 Rhapsody to banish opponent's Necros Mirrors. We have the 1 Evils from Exciton Knight for general board nuking. We have the 1 copy of Abyss Dweller for graveyard-based decks and whatnot. We have the Heroic Champion Excalibur, because Towers outs are always nice. We have the 1 copy of Castel, because Castel is good. We have the 1 copy of Dark Rebellion to act as a general beater of this extra deck. We have the number 101, again, to kind of also go with Castel, but also to give us a defensive option in our extra deck. We have the 1 Gagaga Samurai, again, just to help us get damage into our opponent, as it is a generic Blade Armor Ninja. We have the 1 number 103, because Clyfort and all those scary things. Then we have the 2 Tellarknight monsters, which is the 1 copy of Stellar Knight Constellar Diamond and the 1 Tellarknight Ptolemy for things like Burning Abyss and Shadal's. Then we have 1 rank 5, which is the 1 copy of Shark Fortress, because Shark Fortress is pretty strong, because if you can make this alongside something maybe like a 3k Dreadnought Dunker or something crazy, you can just really just OTK so hard with Shark Fortress. And then finally, we have 1 rank 6 in the form of 1 Constellar Ptolemy M7. Although I don't believe... Wait, can you make it? Yeah, Rival Rebounder is a level 6, so you can usually use a Rival Rebounder and your Goalkeeper to make this guy. And Ptolemy M7 just helps you get cards that might have gotten destroyed that are in your graveyard back into your hand so that you may reuse them, like things like UA Midfielder and whatnot. Alright guys, so that is it for this UA deck profile. I hope you all did enjoy this fairly different and fun build of this deck, as again, I am having a blast with this deck, and I hope you all did enjoy again, and as always, this is Kyurem from the Trinity of Lift, and I'll see all of you guys later. Peace.